Welcome to the Bite-Sized Security Podcast, your source for practical online security advice. Join me, my guest, and sometimes my trained AI voice, as I explore ways to protect your digital footprint against the growing cyber threats. From mastering better passwords to understanding encryption and VPNs, the Bite-Sized Security Podcast breaks complex topics into clear guidance. It's time to take control of your online presence. You're listening to the Bite-Sized Security Podcast, unlocking solutions for your digital life. Let's get to it. So there was a thread on Reddit this week, and someone on our cybersecurity asked a simple question. What is the best personality trait for working in cyber? And the responses were honestly, they were kind of refreshing because nobody said you need to know how to hack. Nobody said get your CISSP. Nobody even mentioned technical skills. The top answers, the ones with hundreds of upvotes, were things like curiosity, patience, humility, and empathy. And after 8+ years in this field, building teams, hiring people, working incidents at 2 a.m, I think the internet got this one right. So today I wanted to walk through the traits that come up the most and share some of my own experiences with each one and give you my honest take on what separates the people who thrive in cybersecurity from the ones who burn out and get pushed out. So let's get into it. Number one, curiosity. The number one answer by a wide margin was curiosity, and it wasn't even close. Somebody literally responded with one word, curiosity. That was the whole comment, and it got the most upvotes in the entire thread. And here's why that resonates with me. Because every single great security person I've ever worked with has had the same habit. They see one line in a log that looks slightly off and they follow it. And most people glance at it, shrug, and move on. But these people don't. They dig, they go read the patch diff after a CVE drops, not because they have to, but because they want to understand the root cause. And I've had colleagues recently that flagged something on our SIM that looked like a false positive. And everybody else on the team, including me, would have closed the ticket. But he didn't, and he spent hours pulling it apart. And it turns out that it was legitimate from an actual member who was trying to log in, but it really did look off. It almost looked like a brute force. And so having to dig through logs and dive and do that kind of stuff to make sure that it wasn't a compromised security account. And they didn't catch it because it was more technical. They caught it because they were more curious and they wanted to find out what the root cause is. So if you don't have the itch to understand how things work and how they break, then this field is probably going to feel like a grind. It's because the technology changes constantly, the threats change constantly, and the only thing that keeps you engaged all of that is genuine curiosity. And for me, thank God for AI, because I'm very curious, and it is creating a lot more jobs in different fields. Now, the second most popular answer was patience. And I want to be specific about what kind of patience we're talking about here. Because one person in this thread said something like, even if I have to say the same thing 5 times, if I treat each time like it's the first time, my blood won't boil. And that's the job. A huge part of cybersecurity is explaining technical risk to people who don't think in technical terms. Maybe you're talking to a CFO about why a vulnerability in your serialization layer matters. You're explaining to a developer why their code needs, to change. You're sitting with an end user who clicked a phishing link for the 3rd time after your training. And you need to have that conversation without making them feel stupid. Because here's the thing, if you make someone feel stupid, they'll stop telling you things. They'll stop reporting suspicious emails. They'll stop flagging weird behavior. And now you've lost the sensor. You've lost visibility. So the professionals who burn out the fastest in this field, well, they're the ones who lose patience with the humans in the system. And I get it because it's frustrating, but the humans are the system. If you're unable to meet them where they are, then you're going to have a hard time. Number 3, this one showed up a bunch of different ways. People said willingness to learn, no ego. So humility is number 3. And one commenter said, and I'm quoting here, the absolute worst trait to deal with in the cybersecurity is ego and arrogance. The people everyone wants to work with are the ones who admit that they don't know, but are smart enough to tell you that they'll find the answer. And I've seen this play out a bunch of times. You'll get a senior security engineer who's been in the field for a long time, and they won't admit that they don't know something. They bluff, they'll talk around it, and what happens? Well, they become the single point of failure because nobody on the team trusts the information they're getting. And meanwhile, the junior person who asks a dumb question, they're the one who catches the assumption everybody missed. So cybersecurity moves too fast for anyone to know everything. And the tech changes daily, new attack techniques, new tools, new frameworks. So if your identity is wrapped up in being the expert, you're either going to fake it, which is dangerous, or you're going to stop learning, which is worse. So the best people I've worked with say, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. More often than you'd expect. Calm under pressure. One person in this thread described this as stoicism, and they shared a story that struck with me. They talked about a team member, highly skilled, intelligent, great at the work. And then one day this person walked into their manager's office and broke down. Couldn't handle the pressure anymore. The manager sent them home with pay to recover. And, well, they never came back. They quit that afternoon. Because this field puts you in high-stakes situations. Incident response at 2 a.m. when you're half asleep, and the CISO is on the phone asking for a status update. A breach where the scope keeps growing every hour. A 0-day drops on a Friday afternoon, and there's no patch, and your environment's exposed. So your ability to stay focused when everything is on fire matters more than your ability to pass any certification exam. And several people in the thread said something interesting. They said they perform better under pressure. It locks them in, it sharpens their focus. And I can relate to that, but I'll also say this. There's a difference between performing well under pressure and needing pressure to perform. One's a skill, the other's a warning sign, and we'll come back to that. Empathy and kindness. Now, this was the answer I found the most interesting because it kept surfacing independently from different people in different parts of the thread. Too many security professionals without empathy. Security folks have an extreme tendency to be condescending towards others. Grace and kindness is something lacking in this technology field. And here's why this one matters more than people realize. Because cybersecurity is a people problem wrapped up in a technology problem. Your controls affect real humans. Your policies create friction in someone's workday. And if people are afraid to come to you when something goes wrong, because they'll know you'll make them feel small, well, incidents go unreported. Threats stay hidden. Your security posture gets worse, not better, because you were a jerk about it. So one commenter said, having people like to work with you is the biggest superpower. Having people you like to work with is the biggest superpower. That's true. And in my experience, that is true, because the security teams with the best outcomes are the ones where people across the organization want to bring them in early, not because they have to, but because they know they'll be treated like partners, not lectured like children. But being technically right doesn't matter if nobody wants to work with you. And now the uncomfortable part. Between the serious answers in the thread, there's a darker theme running through it, and that's worth talking about it. People kept bringing up ADHD, trauma-induced hypervigilance. One person joked about finding joy in suffering, and they described cybersecurity professionals as, quote, trauma-powered machines whose purpose is providing their value but never being satisfied because they believe they're unworthy. Okay, it was funny, people laughing about it, but it was also true for a lot of people in that thread. Cybersecurity attracts people who are wired to see threats, spot patterns, stay alert, and those are genuine assets in this field. But for a lot of people, those traits are tied to experiences and mental health challenges worth paying attention to. The always-on mindset is a strength until it isn't. And if you're in this field long enough, burnout is real. I've seen it, I've felt it. So remember what I said earlier about performing well under pressure versus needing pressure to function? Well, if you're only locked in when everything is on fire, take a step back and ask why. Because the best cybersecurity professionals aren't the ones who sprints out the hardest. It's the ones who are still there in 5 years. So take care of yourself, seriously. So, curiosity, patience, humility, staying calm under pressure, empathy. None of those are technical skills. You won't find them on a certification exam, but every single one of them showed up independently from hundreds of working professionals in the field. And after 8+ years, I'd sign off on this whole list because technical skills are trainable. You're going to learn tools on the job. You'll pick up frameworks, scripting languages, detection logic. All of that's learnable, especially with AI. But these traits, curiosity, patience, humility, kindness under pressure, those are harder to develop. And they're the ones separating the people everyone wants on their team from the people nobody wants to work with. So if you're thinking about getting into cybersecurity, don't ask yourself, am I technical enough? Ask yourself, am I curious enough to keep learning, patient enough to explain things twice, and honest enough to say when I don't know? Because if the answer is yes, I think you'll do fine. I'm Marc David. This is Bite Size Security. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Bite Size Security, the quick-hitting podcast serving bite-sized tips to boost your online safety. We covered a lot of ground today and easy-to-digest nuggets of practical cybersecurity advice. If you want to learn more ways to protect your data and identity online, be sure to subscribe for future episodes. We'll continue breaking down complex security topics into straightforward guidance anyone can apply. Visit our website, bitesizesecurity.show, for recaps and show notes from all of our podcasts. We hope these bite-sized cyber lessons have given you new tools in your digital security toolbox. This is your host signing off until next time. Stay safe in the digital world. You've been listening to Bite Size Security.